remember a couple of years ago, 2 years in fact, maybe not to the very day, but it was February of 2024, when Piers Morgan was interviewing Werner Herzog. Now, regardless of how you feel about Morgan, I was, of course, going to show up for Herzog himself. If there were to be sort of a Mount Rushmore of my film heroes, he would definitely be among them. He is a man who I have taken inspiration from, of course, but and much encouragement personally, of course, but just by watching his movies, I mean, you feel it. And of course, I mean, sort of there is a deep respect for his body of work. Um, and I think at one point I would, or at least I used to swear by the man, but not after this interview. The interview, which of course was straightforward enough. It covered his life, his body of work, his idiosyncrasies, and then of course Morgan veers towards. First of all, they start talking about Germany and how sort of institutions crumble, of course, with reference to Germany's Nazi past and how it led to World War II, the Holocaust, and sort of that is the question that Morgan asks of Herzog. But then he asks of him the very same question in light of Gaza. Of course, this is February of 2024, almost 4 or 5 months into Israel's genocidal onslaught on Gaza, on the Gaza Strip. Of course, this was the initial days, or at least the very first, blush moments for Morgan, because the thing is, he was on that high horse of do you condemn Hamas? He hadn't quite yet turned, or at least woken up to the horrors that Israel was committing in Gaza. And as a result, a lot of his interviews, regardless of who they were with, often steered towards sympathy with Israel. And I thought, okay, uh, that may be, of course, his stance, Morgan's. Herzog, of course, is going to give a real answer because the thing is that this man, at least in his opinions, in his ideology, is very unvarnished, eloquently so, but very unvarnished, very straightforward. I mean, sort of, you can tell, you know exactly what he means. Um, when he says, I mean, sort of, when he pronounces on any particular topic. But in this, of course, he gives such a wishy washy statement, something that is neither here nor there, and something that made me, of course, lose all respect for him. Instead of perhaps denouncing what Israel was doing in Gaza, because the thing is that very early on, we learned this wasn't about the hostages. This wasn't about, say, for example, bringing Hamas to task for what happened on October 7th. No. This was wholesale punishment. This was wholesale murder of a people. And we saw that within the very first days, in fact, of Israel's offense in Gaza. Herzog goes on to say that regardless of how you feel about the particular, the matter pro-Israel or pro-Palestine, we must not slide back into, of course, anti-Semitism because that was something that Hasbara was really, sort of pushing out there. That sort of like, um, because of Hamas's actions were highly anti-Semitic. They were sort of meant to stoke even more of it, and sort of like that is one thing that we cannot go back to, and that's what Herzog says. But he does not say never again. He does not say that yes, I'm firmly with him on this. That sort of like sliding back into anti-Semitism. Their actions, regardless of Israel's actions, people should not take this as an excuse to commit anti-Semitic act, right? But where was his words of sympathy or his caution for what Israel was doing in Gaza? The murder of its people, the genocide of them, the starving of them. That hadn't happened yet, of course, the starving part. But at least the murder was taking place on a daily basis. Hundreds of Gazans were being killed. Where was the caution then? Why didn't he say never again? Well, I mean, sort of, yes, never again to the Holocaust, but when it comes to the genocide of brown peoples, then of course there always qualifies. The reason I even bring this up today, I'm sorry for the long-winded introduction, is because recently, and this was last Thursday, at the 2026 Berlin Film Festival, jury president Wim Wenders, another sort of uh, greatly respected director, his comments regarding Gaza just blew my mind. I mean, in an interview, I mean, sort of, they were all there, all of the jury members, and sort of naturally, what's it called? And what's it called? A reporter posed a question to the jury president, um, which I shall. They were asked, of course, to comment on Gaza itself. A reporter asked them this. His response, of course, Wenders was, we have to stay out of politics because if we make movies that are dedicatedly political, we enter the field of politics. But we are the counterweight of politics. We are the opposite of politics. We have to do the work of people, not the work of politicians. Another jury member, who happens to be, and this is so surprising and ironic, she happens to be the producer for The Zone of Interest, Jonathan Glazer's film. Iwa Chenska, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I don't know. There are many other wars where genocide is committed, and we do not talk about that. So this is a very complicated question, and I think it's a bit unfair asking us what do you think, how we support, not support, talking to our governments or not. Of course, the question was asked because the German government funds the Berlin Film Festival. The reporter was asking how, on the one side, do we accept a German government complicit in genocide in funding and supporting Israel, but then on the other hand, funding and supporting a film festival? It's a very fair question. And this was their answer. Of course, this is the same Wim Wenders who, in the past, said this. Every film is political. Most political of all are those that pretend not to be entertainment movies. They are the most political films there are because they dismiss the possibility of change. In every frame, they tell you everything's fine the way it is. They are a continual advertisement for things as they are. What this man posits, or at least what he says in a very cowardly statement made on that stage, Berlin Film Festival, is that films have no right to be political. How he can say this boggles the mind. I mean, I just, as a medium of expression, film, book, theater, poems, music, art, any form of expression lends itself to being political, because the thing is, at the end of the day, the expression is coming from not from an automaton or a robot or something like that. It is coming from a person. The person, of course, has ideologies, believes, sort of in whatever they wish to believe. They have opinions, they have political opinions. So they, of course, can channel all of that into their art. So to say that films are somehow divorced from politics is, it's not even tone deaf. It is, I think, in ignorance of his own career. It is in ignorance of every movie produced in Germany after the Weimar Republic, not even after the Weimar Republic, but then, of course, the Nazi era, and then films all after that. How can this man say, I mean, for the love of God, how can this man say that filmmakers should not wade into politics? And if we do make a film or at least comment upon politics, it is sort of we are treading perhaps on the turf, or stepping on the toes of politicians, and we should leave it to them, and we should stick to just making films. So in essence, he is contrary to what he's actually said there, where, sort of entertainment, movies, politics, all of that stuff. I don't understand that. I would love for somebody like, for example, Boda, who famously, sort of stood up during one of the Cannes film festivals, I'm not sure which year, in solidarity with the student protests. And I mean, they got it shut down. He's like, here we are in solidarity, and here you are talking about, I don't know, camera placements or something like that. So, I mean, it is cowardly, it is yellow, it is typical, I would say. And it's sad to sweep all of them with the same brush, but very typical of Germany itself. Their stance on Palestine, their stance on Gaza over the past 2 years, continuing to this day. Because, if we are led to believe that there's peace, there's a ceasefire, then hundreds of Palestinians who have died since the ceasefire, I mean, that would never have happened, right? So it continues to this day. But their stance has been, I mean, it is as bad, not even almost, it is as bad as their slide into Nazism. It is commensurate with that, it is equal with that. And for an artist like Wenders, who again I respect, I mean, he's made some fantastic movies: Perfect Days, Paris, Texas, Wings of Desire, The Buena Vista Social Club, all of these things. For a man like this to give a statement like this is clearly shows that, I mean, I mean, being jury president means more to him than speaking the truth. Of course, here is now a person of conviction, Miss Arundhati Roy of India, an author, world famous, who was going to premiere, I think, her first movie at the film festival. And she, in disgust and also in protest, pulled out of the festival. And I would like to read out her comments. Although I have been profoundly disturbed by the positions taken by the German government and various German cultural institutions on Palestine, I've always received political solidarity when I've spoken to German audiences about my views on the genocide in Gaza. This is what made it possible for me to think of attending the screening of Annie, her film, at the Berlinale. This morning, like millions of people across the world, I heard the unconscionable statements made by members of the jury of the Berlin Film Festival when they were asked to comment about the genocide in Gaza. To hear them say that art should not be political is jaw dropping. It is a way of shutting down a conversation about a crime against humanity, even as it unfolds before us in real time, when artists, writers, and filmmakers should be doing everything in their power to stop it. Let me say this clearly. What has happened in Gaza, what continues to happen, is a genocide of the Palestinian people by the state of Israel. It is supported and funded by the governments of the US and Germany, as well as several other countries in Europe, which makes them complicit in the crime. If the greatest filmmakers and artists of our time cannot stand up and say so, they should know that history will judge them. I am shocked and disgusted. With deep regret, I must say I will not be attending the Berlinale. And we too are shocked and disgusted because it is the same film festival that has been very strident in supporting, for example, Ukraine, Iran, and to be making political statements about it. At this very film festival, they opened with a movie made by a Afghan director, a female. I think the movie is called No Good Men. Um, it's clear the movie is not going to be pro-Taliban, right? So it's going to be a political movie, even if sort of I haven't seen the movie. I'm not sure exactly what it's about, but I think it's about the run-up or the lead-up to the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan in 2021. So isn't that a political movie? I can understand if, for example, Wenders felt that maybe perhaps this wasn't the right platform, but it is the right platform. It is exactly the right platform. Any platform provided demands that you must think about this. Let's look at Pep Guardiola. I'm not a football fan, but I mean, at least we know that he has been very vocal in talking about Gaza. And this is not, for example, when he's asked, maybe even if he's asked by, reporters on how he might feel about FIFA. For example, why is Israel still a member? Why are they still allowed to play, so on and so forth? No, no, no. This is him, whenever he gets a chance, whether it's post game, whether it's sort of like any other interview, he is right. Because the thing is, he has been granted this platform, and he is right in using this platform to speak his mind. If a man like that can speak about these things, what held Wender's tongue? This is, I think, the case for most of filmdom, if you will, in that it has been split right down the middle, in that you have people who are firmly with Palestine and those. And this isn't about sort of how you may feel about sort of, let the Jews have their own homeland. So, all of that stuff. Those firmly with Palestine are on the right side of history. Those on this side who are being, of course, outwardly like Wenders. I don't know how he personally feels about it. Maybe he is pro-Palestine. I don't know. Or Herzog. I don't know. Or then those who are Zionists themselves. These are people comfortable with the erasure of a people. These people are comfortable with doing all of this for the sake of, this country. And very rightly, and I will end on this note, many actors, many filmmakers, producers, all of these people from the industry um, came out to say that they will no longer work with people who express such, well, an ideology or express sympathies for Israel. Remember Javier Bardem? I mean, in the interview, that was with Mehdi Hassan a couple of weeks ago, I think. And he was very clear. He's like, I'm no longer going to work with such people. How can you?